Kirill Kaprizov does it again as the Wild pick up a massive win over the Calgary Flames to give themselves a 2-point lead heading into the final day of the regular season. We recap the win, a huge performance on special teams, and more. Our Locked on Wild postcast starts right now.
You're Locked on Wild, your daily podcast on the Minnesota Wild. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to yet another Minnesota Wild postcast as the Wild win 3-2 in overtime over the Calgary Flames. We have a lot coming at you here to recap the big win for the Wild. Seth Topol joined by Kevin Gorg, and our Locked on Wild postcast tonight brought to you by Shady Rays. Shady Rays is an independent sunglasses company that gives you the features of $200 sunglasses for a fraction of the price. That means polarized lenses, well-constructed durable frames, and premium high-end finishes. Also, something you won't find anywhere else is Shady Rays' Insane Protection Program. Shady Rays includes lost and broken protection on every single pair of sunglasses. They'll send you a brand new pair if you lose them, no matter what happened. So give them a try, and if you don't love them, you will not pay a cent. It's as simple as that. Plus, 10 meals are donated to fight hunger in America when you shop with Shady Rays. Exclusively for our listeners, head to shadyrays.com and use the code LOCKEDON to get 50% off 2 or more pairs of polarized sunglasses. That's code LOCKEDON for their best deal of the season, 50% off 2 or more pairs of Shady Rays sunglasses, backed by over 150,000 verified 5-star reviews. Seth Topol joined by Kevin Gorg, and the Wild pick up 2 huge points. And first off, before we dive in, what a game, what a night. Just an unbelievable atmosphere and the perfect playoff tune-up for the Wild here against the Flames.
Yeah, I got to tell you, Seth, it's been all year long. Dean Evason's talked about it this morning. Bill Guerin touched on that. The crowds here have been absolutely spectacular. And I think, there are a lot of silver linings that come out of a pandemic situation like we had where we didn't get a lot of fans and then we had limited fans. They're gathered around during warmups now. So a half an hour before the game starts, they're 6, 8, 10 deep around the rink, ready to cheer on the Wild, watch them, make signs. And then when the game starts, every seat is full. It's a hockey crowd. They know the game here. They know how to kind of pick their spots to help push the team through. And the guys have all talked about it tonight. Every one of my interviews at some point post-game between Frederic Gaudreau and Cam Talbot and even Dmitry Kulikov touched on what those fans mean. So that's what you're fighting for tomorrow night, to try to get a point against Colorado, to get an extra game at home, because I really think for this team it matters.
Yeah, it would be a huge boost, especially against the likes of the St. Louis Blues. And it all comes down to the final game of the season against the Avs, and we'll talk about that to finish things up here today. Had quite the goalie battle tonight with Jacob Markstrom against Cam Talbot, and it has been so fun to watch Talbot on this stretch that he's on. It's been a couple of months of just dominating starts from Talbot, and against one of the probably the best lines in hockey, he shut them down and kept this team in the game until they could find a way to solve Markstrom.
Yeah, it was a vintage Cam Talbot performance. He was clean. He was efficient. He wasn't giving second looks. He just looked so sharp. And you mentioned in almost 2 months, his last regulation loss was at home against Calgary way back in March, and on March 1st. So, we're talking 13-0-3 now in his last 17 appearances. And aside from the stats and the numbers and the dates, it's just the eye test. He just looks like he is so sharp right now. And if you're going to have a setup into the playoffs for a goalie, and that's going to be his last dress rehearsal, that's exactly what you'd look for.
We've talked quite a bit, and it has been talked about, no matter which podcast you listen to, the special teams units for the Wild have been very up and down this year. And it comes down to just kind of being aggressive, I think, on both the power play and the penalty kill. And you could not have had a better performance by both of those units. The penalty kill, playing aggressively and frustrating the Flames, and then the power play gets a couple of goals as well. So that is also a huge and very encouraging sign heading into the playoffs, because those units are both going to be tested come playoff time.
Yeah, and in playoffs, it comes down to goaltending and special teams because the teams are so evenly matched. These series are going to go 6, sometimes 7 games. You look at the matchup with St. Louis, there's no question special teams are likely going to tip the pendulum one way or the other. And if you look at the game tonight, missing Jared Spurgeon, missing Matt Dumba, the penalty kill was absolutely outstanding. That's a top 5 power play in the National Hockey League. The Wild go 4 for 4 on the kill. And at key moments in that game, we're able to shut the Flames down, including the first minute and 51 seconds of the third period. Now you flip over to the power play, and Dean Evason very disappointed with the power play against Arizona 2 nights ago. Not only were they 0 for 6, Seth, but he thought they were way, way too cute. And really a point of emphasis this morning when we talked to the guys after morning skate was getting more aggressive on the power play. So what happens? Jonas Brodin gets the puck in the high slot. He blasts one through traffic. They get a goal. And then even in 4-on-3 overtime, where you have all that space and you have all that creativity with Fiala and Kaprizov and all that talent, what do? Tic-tac-toe, quick pass. Kaprizov wastes no time, one-times it. So that reinforces the message from the coaching staff that that's how you're going to have to play this thing. You're going to have to be quick with those shots because teams like St. Louis can really clog up the middle of the rink and block shots if you get too cute.
Huge tip of the cap to Frederic Gaudreau as well. And I was watching in my living room and absolutely came up out of my chair when he wedged that goal past Markstrom. Kind of gets lost in all the shuffle of how good that second line has been with Kevin Fiala and Matt Boldy, but 14 goals now in the season for him. He has been a huge part of that line's success, and maybe one of his biggest goals in a Wild uniform, and it came at a perfect time.
Yeah, I'll be the first to confess I didn't know a lot about Freddie when the Wild picked him up, but as soon as we had a chance during training camp to talk to the coaches, and specifically Dean Evason, who had coached him prior, we were put on alert that this guy was a special part and an important piece. And then you watch him night in, night out, and sure, he's going to get overshadowed by Fiala and Boldy. Those are 2 would-be superstars. But if you watch the details of his game, what he does in the defensive zone without the puck, the way he works on the faceoffs, the way he works on the penalty kill. And then you talk to Boldy and Fiala about the freedom it allows them to have in their game when you've got a guy like that playing down low in the D zone, which he always does. He's such a responsible player. And then I got to tell you, I've been doing this job for 16 years. You will not find much better a gentleman than Freddie Gaudreau. I mean, this guy is a team guy. Thanks everybody every chance he gets, the training staff, the equipment guys. When I get done doing an interview, he thanks my camera guy and myself and my spotter. I mean, he's that guy. I mean, you talk about just a class act. So Billy Guerin and Dean Evason had some intel on him. The Pittsburgh connection played out. And I think when you think of unsung heroes this year, he'd be at the top of my list.
Yeah, he's been sensational all season. And it all comes down to a big one for the Wild against the Avalanche tomorrow night. And so, Kevin, to finish off our postcast here tonight, we'll talk about the Avs game. We'll talk about a big start for Marc-Andre Fleury before the postseason. All that coming up. But first, another of our sponsors for these Locked On Wild postcasts is betonline.net. They're your number one source for all of your betting stats and sports info. You can find all the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including this year's NBA playoffs, Major League Baseball, and the final push to the Stanley Cup playoffs. BetOnline is your continued source for all of your sports wagering information, from live betting to playoffs, esports, and more. The Kentucky Derby right around the corner as well. So head to their website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and the action, all of which you can find at BetOnline, where the game starts. Another win for the Minnesota Wild as they beat the Calgary Flames in overtime, setting up the final game of the regular season. Kevin Gorg, we know the stakes for the Wild now. They need 1 point to get the 2 seed in the Central Division and host the St. Louis Blues in the first-round series starting up next week. The Avalanche are a juggernaut. They have been scuffling a little bit as of late, but some of that, when you clinch so early, it's hard to really keep yourself engaged all the way through the regular season. So some of that struggles due to injury. Everything else, it's still going to be an incredible battle against this Avs team, but the Wild know what they need to do in order to get home field for next week, and it all comes down to at least 1 point.
I think it's nice to know what you have to do. I think winning tonight allows them that freedom. And Colorado's still playing as we talk right now. They're in the third period in a battle against Nashville. And I got to tell you, I don't anticipate them resting a bunch of guys, but Kemper's in goal tonight. Makar has scored a goal. And if you're Colorado and your ultimate goal is the Stanley Cup, the President's Trophy is still technically up for grabs. They're a couple points behind Florida if they hang on tonight to that victory. But they are likely not going to get into the Twin Cities until 1:30 or 2 o'clock in the morning. So my guess is, as we sit here right now, that there'll be at least a couple of players that are arrested. And, for the Wild, they can't worry about that. What they've got to worry about is the task at hand. And Colorado is still a rival. They've still got a ton of talent, and they're still a great skating team. It's going to be a big challenge for Minnesota, but it sure is nice to have that game at home, to be in your bed, cozy and resting up while they're still traveling into your town. And I think you touched on it going into the quick spot there. Marc-Andre Fleury, it's going to be his last start before the playoffs. If you're a Wild fan and you think this team's going to make a run, I can promise you both guys in that net will make an imprint on that run. And Fleury's got those 3 cups. He's got the experience, but he just hasn't looked sharp here down the stretch. I had a conversation with him this morning, and he talked about what he's working on, trying to get just a little more clean in his side-to-side work and not give up those big, juicy rebounds. And he plays the acrobatic style, so he acknowledges it's different than a lot of other goalies. But, I know that goaltending coach Freddie Chabot and Marc-Andre Fleury have been working hard. He's a competitor. He wants to be out there under the spotlight of this big game, and I think you're going to see maybe his best performance in a Wild sweater tomorrow. I know he's amped up to get back out there.
That would be absolutely sensational. We may or may not see Frederic Gaudreau, Matt Dumba, and Jared Spurgeon. It sounded like they were skating before the Calgary game. And so does it matter if we see him or not before the playoffs? Would you like to see him at least get out on the ice? Or ultimately, as long as they're ready to rock come playoff time, that seems to be the ultimate thing, isn't it?
I wouldn't change anything with the lineup outside of starting Fleury. I think Zuccarello is such a valuable piece, and I know it'd be a nice thing to have him, but I would keep him in bubble wrap. I don't think we're going to see Matt Dumba. He's been skating, but I think they're still working through the contact and then getting his shot where he wants it because it's still a work in progress. Jared Spurgeon's the one guy we might see. I think there's an outside chance that they might put Jordy Ben back up in the press box and give Spurgeon a chance to work out the kinks. They said he really dodged a bullet off that hit in Nashville where he got crunched behind the Wild net and kind of landed awkwardly. It was deemed an upper body injury. So of the 3, Zuccarello, Dumba, and Spurgeon, I think Spurgeon's the most likely. I think Dumba's the least likely, and I think the wild card might be Zuccarello. And I think, we probably won't even find out till 5 o'clock tomorrow when Dean Evason meets with the media. But I think it'd be good to get the captain back out there.
Yeah, I fully agree. It's going to be a fun atmosphere, the final game of the regular season, and so a fun chance to see this team play one more time before the postseason gets going next week, and can't wait. We'll get a chance to see it in person, so that's going to be fun as well. The final tune-up before the playoffs, and you can't beat what this Wild team has done this season.
You just don't want it to end. I think right now, if you talk to Wild fans, and I'll include myself in the group, it has been such a pleasure to watch these guys compete. I love the coaching staff. I love the GM and his passion this morning when he met with us. And bottom line is, this is a really great group of guys to work with, and I want to see them get rewarded for how hard they've worked. They've put the time in. They're awesome on the ice, but I can promise you, if you're out there watching this podcast, they're better off the ice. And I've had a lot of great teams that I've been lucky enough to travel with and work with in my 16 years covering this team. This team is at the top of the list. They are just an outstanding group of young men. So, yeah, let's get that home ice. Let's find a way to use that home ice to our advantage and make a run. And it's going to be a lot of fun tomorrow night. I know you're going to be there in person. It's going to be loud, and it's going to be amped up when the Avalanche come calling.
Can't wait. Kevin, thank you as always for the time. So listeners, no postcast tomorrow night, but don't worry, we will be ready to rock come playoff time against the Blues next week. So enjoy the game tomorrow night. Make sure you are tuning into Locked On Wild wherever you listen to your podcasts. Full previews coming up to get you ready for Wild Blues next week. And you can hear all that and more as part of the Locked On Podcast Network by subscribing to Locked On Wild wherever you listen to podcasts.